Members, good morning. It's time for us to start our meeting. We've already formed a quorum as well, so let's start. Today is the first meeting of 2015 for the panel on development. Here, I'd like to wish you Happy New Year. Let's proceed to item 1 on the agenda. Confirmation of minutes. Minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of October, LC paper number CB bracket 1347/14 to 15. Up to this moment, the Secretariat has not received any proposal for amendment. If members have no comment, I suggest that we have the minutes confirmed. Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. The details have already set out on the agenda. Any special comments on these information papers? No? Then we proceed to the next item on the agenda. Our next regular meeting will be held on the 27th of January, Tuesday, from 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. The item for discussion will be briefing by the Secretary for Development on the policy initiatives in the Chief Executive's policy address. So we would spend 2 hours on that item. Any comment? No? Then we proceed to the next item. Liantang Hengyuan boundary control point and associated works. Please invite the officials to come in. First of all, I'd like to welcome the government representatives. The name list has already been tabled, so I won't spend time on introducing them one by one. May I invite the government representatives to brief us on the item. Are you going to use a PowerPoint presentation? Yes, please be concise as far as possible. Thank you, Chairman. On the 11th of June 2014, our Bureau submitted a paper to this panel. Originally, this was scheduled for June to July last year in relation to the latest progress of Liantang Hengyuan Y. However, at the last legislative session, we did not have time for that, so we have submitted an updated paper for members' reference. Briefly, this project is divided into 3 major parts. First of all, site formation for the project and connecting roads. Number 2, improvement of Shenzhen River and boundary patrol. And then the construction work, including the clearance tower. In 2012-13, works have already started for some of these projects. For the connecting roads, the bidding prices had been higher, so the original budget would not be able to cope with the remaining expenses. So we would like to apply for supplementary funding from the LEUNG. The second part is the part on rationalizing Shenzhen River. Progress has been good and the expenses have been within budget, so we don't need supplementary funding. The third part is the major part of this paper, that is the construction works and related facilities. In January 2013, the LEUNG allocated funds for design and investigation. The detailed design was roughly completed in March 2014. And then in August, we started the tendering work for the construction of the main building. In early 2015, we're now assessing the bids. We envisage that if today we've got the panel support, we'll proceed as far as possible to the PWSC and FC of the LEUNG for funding, in the hope that we can start the construction works in March 2015, such that we can complete the whole BCP by 2018. Now I'll defer to my colleagues for the construction works of the building. Good morning. From the first photo, you can say that in October 2014, that's the case. The To Kwa Wan Station had been relocated on the Hong Kong side, and across the dotted line is the training of Shenzhen River. To the left, you see Shenzhen. To the right, you see Hong Kong. Shanford Road had already started their foundation works. Well, I'll skip this one because this has already been included in the briefing just now. Or maybe I should elaborate. This is the 7th land boundary control point. Given the geographical constraints, Man Kam To and Sha Tau Kok could not meet the cross-boundary requirements on the eastern side. We're expecting 30,000 passenger trips and over 17,000 vehicular trips. Now, Lentang is here, Man Kam To to the left, Lo Wu to the left, and then to the right, Sha Tau Kok, linking to Huizhou and Dongguan. Okay? Now, this is the whole Lentang BCP, an aerial view. To the left is Shenzhen River, the bend there, and then to the right, Hong Kong side. Up there, you see the green-roofed structure just crossing the boundary. That's the clearance building. All right, this is the whole facility. To the left, the orange part, northbound, right side southbound, northbound to Shenzhen, southbound to Hong Kong. At the beginning is the orange part for cargo clearance, and then the inspection kiosk. And if further inspection is ready, is 16, 14, and 4. No problem, cross the border and going to the Shenzhen side, cross the bridge after 17, an inspection station to weigh the vehicles, and 15, 16 for checking the vehicles. No problem, the vehicles can leave the BCP. Up here is the podium, an individual bridge up there. When vehicles are up there, private cars and coaches are to come up to this podium. For coaches, passengers have to disembark and go to 1, the building, and then exit. For private cars, to 02, the inspection kiosk for private cars, and then 03 and 04 also for inspection. No problems, cars can go to the Shenzhen side. Return trip, the same, a bridge, 02 inspection, 03, 04 for detailed checks of vehicles and coaches. For coaches, as I said, for the podium level, is for exit across the bridge. On return, it will be the 2nd floor and then downstairs. Passengers will go up to the coaches, which can then leave. And then an individual bridge leading to the urban areas. Next, under the podium, 2 more levels. To the right, 2 levels. You see the layout plan. Under the podium, a public car park. Members of the public can drive directly there. Look at the right. The arrow points to the stopping point. 07, an alighting point. This is for park and ride. When vehicles come there, they can set down their passengers, or if they want to park at 060400 parking spaces, after parking, they can cross to Shenzhen. Another plan show you the ground floor level with a public transport interchange. At the narrow here, you see buses, GMBs, or non-cross-boundary backup buses and coaches. Back there, you have a taxi stand. And then ancillary facilities. Up here, orange patch, 1314, fire station, police station, customs and excise, and also for the police dogs. All right, now it's early 2015. We would like to apply to the PWSC and the FC for funding. If we obtain the funding, works will start in early 2015, such that we can commission the BCP in 2018. On MOD, it would be $8.8119 billion. I'd like to remind members that in accordance with ROP 83A, if any member has any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to a particular item, before discussion, that member must disclose the interest before speaking. All right, question time for members. I suggest that we'll give each member 4 minutes, including questions and answers. Let me read out the names. Mr. Gary Fan, Chen Kam Lam, Wu Chi Wai, Fernando Chung, Leung Chi Chung, Chen Hak Kan, Yu Si Wing, Kenneth Chan, Alice Mack. 4 minutes, questions and answers. Mr. Gary Fan. Thank you, Chairman. Members of the public, on returning in 2015, see that we got this overspending of Lantang Hung Yun Wai up from $16 billion to $200 billion. I've never supported this Lantang Hung Yun Wai project. I have 2 questions. Number 1, overspending. Any necessity for this white elephant project? And also the monitoring system as discussed in newspapers today. When this was launched, the project was based on the land vehicular transport in 2005. A growth was expected, and so it's said that they will need this project. But from 2007 to 2014, there was an annual growth of 6%. But since 2014, we got a drop from 6% to 1%, and in recent years, we got a stop.
Between 2011 and 2013, there are about 42,000 vehicle trips every day. So there is a big gap because we're talking about using the capacity of 1/6, and for the Liantang Hung Yun Wai, the capacity is 18,000 vehicle trips a day. Is about 43% of the overall vehicle trips, and we're talking about 100,000 passenger trips that is catered for some other areas. And for the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, we're talking about 200,000 vehicle trips a day capacity. So what is the necessity of this Liantang Hung Yun Wai BCP? Do you expect that there is going to be a relaxation of the individual visit scheme and also the Hong Kong Guangzhou vehicle license. Why would you waste Hong Kong people's money like this? Another one is about the civil engineering and also construction. There are two different sets of standards. It's reported in newspaper today. Has the administration considered that the system, that is, there are two systems for one kind of work? Will there be some improvement so that contractors can use the loophole to inflate the cost or abuse the system? When it comes to the layout of the BCP, well, currently for Mankamto and Ka-lok, the vehicle capacity is about 16 to 17,000 a day. That is the vehicle capacity. And compared to Shenzhen, it only caters for 10% because 90% of the volume is over the western side, Shenzhen Bay and Wangang. We reckon that vehicles coming from the east, say Shanwei, Shantao, Tongguan, they now have to use the western side to come to Hong Kong. We have done an estimate. Say, for example, in Taipo, if you want to go to Longgang, without the Shenzhen, without the Liantang Hanyunwai BCP, vehicles will have to go via the west. So there is an extra 20 minutes. We're talking about a large volume of vehicles, spending 20 minutes more. Even if we have 18,000 vehicles traveling via the west before going back to the east, even with the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the situation will not improve. Currently, only 10% of the overall volume is using the eastern side. We hope that it will be increased with the Liantang-Hanyunwai BCP. And currently, passengers use railway services. We're talking about 30,000 passenger trips using the Liantang Hanyunwai BCP, which is a small amount compared to over 100,000 passenger trips a day. Well, you have overrun. You've used up your time. Maybe we will keep to the 4 minutes, and you will supplement if there is spare time. In answer to another member's question, maybe. Mr. Chen Kamlam, the Liantang Hanyunwai BCP is conducive to Hong Kong's future development. It also facilitates a passenger travel and vehicular transport. From your presentation, I heard that some vehicles, especially coaches, will have to use the upper floor. In Shenzhen Bay BCP, I say that the current plan is quite good, but with the increase in passenger, there are some problems. Because when everything is on the ground floor at grade, apart from vehicles, passengers can board or alight from vehicles at grade on the same level. But that is not possible in the Liantang Hanyunwai BCP. What if in the future there is a large number of passengers and vehicles? Is there any capacity to expand? Have you taken that into account? And you estimate that at the beginning of 2015 you will get funding approval, and in March 2015 work can commence. You have started the tender exercise. You're now vetting the proposals, and you will have to shortly award tender. Yet there are two hurdles in the LEUNG. One is the PWSC, the other one is the FC. Why do you think that you will get your funding approval in February or March? Because the Pan-Democrats here has started this non-cooperation movement. Well, if it's passed, if you don't get your funding approval after March, then the whole tender exercise will be null and void. I will defer to my colleague for information about a possible expansion for coaches. When it comes to the timetable, yes, we hope that the tender will be awarded in March for works to be completed in 2018. Apart from the BCP, we also need the connecting roads. We have to ask for additional funding from the LEUNG for the connecting roads, and there is a small delay. What's most urgent now is the connecting road, because there is still one outstanding contract to be awarded. If that cannot be done, then we are not sure whether works can be completed in 2018. There is pressure. Even when the contract is awarded on time, the connecting road can only be completed at the end of 2018. So we are concerned whether the BCP can be completed in 2018. For the for the complex itself, we need to test it, trial run it before it's fully commissioned. And yes, if we do not get the funding approval on time, then we will have to compress the timetable or delay the project. There are 32 parking spaces, 13 outgoing, I'm talking about coaches, and 19 inbound. Information shows that that will be sufficient. And about 10, there will be 10, well, we have catered for 10 school buses, inbound and outbound, respectively. Well, we're using 2008 information paper. Well, there was an update in 2010, but have you done any update about the overall traffic demand over the eastern side? There is a shift of manufacturing activities on the mainland towards the west, and in Shantou, Shanwei, there may be some change in their export arrangements. So how will it affect us? Have you done any updating in your information? When it comes to connecting roads via the east, you say that it can save us 22 minutes. How much of the traffic will use the east, and how much of the traffic will in the end go to our cargo terminal? So I want to know about cargoes, about container vehicles using the eastern side. Last time in our discussion in a funding approval meeting, someone mentioned that precious land resources. We're talking about 33 hectares of land taken up by this BCP. And conventional approach was used. There will be a BCP, but there will also be roads. There are some agricultural land and green belt in the surrounding area. And if you encroach upon them, there will be environmental issue. We're talking about precious land. Can you stack up the various facilities? You have asked for land, and you're only asking them for road only. I'll answer Mr. Wu's first question. Traffic increase. In 2008, we conducted a long-term prediction. By 2020, the increase in traffic will be about 70,000 vehicular trips. That's territory-wide, covering the different BCPs. And our estimate back then, in relation to the eastern BCP, is that if we rely on Man Kam To and Lok Ma Chau, that is 17,000 vehicular trips, that is not sufficient. Any update? We don't have the data for the eastern side alone. In the past few years, for individual BCPs, there may be a reduction, but there are also increases in others. And currently, the traffic volume stands at 40,000, which is slightly lower than the prediction in 2008. But we are looking at 2032 or 2050. We have to be ahead of the increase. My question was whether there was any update and whether they have done any study on the impact on Hong Kong with the shift of the manufacturing activities. Well, we have not gone into so much detail. Any overall survey done? No, we don't have the information. There are two outstanding questions. You have to wait for the second round. Dr. Fernando Zhang. When it comes to the construction of the BCP, I've read from the news that in 2007 the estimate was 1.9 billion. And in June last year, the information showed that it has increased to 6.9 billion. And now they ask for 8.8 billion. So over a period of 6 months, the project cost has increased by 1.9 billion, which is the original estimate of the entire project. We're talking about 28% increase over 6 months' time. What happened? I would like to hear an answer. I would like to clarify that the information paper in June 2014, that was the money of the day prices of August 2013, 6.9 billion. But 8.8 billion is the money of the day prices of today. So we are now asked for 8.8 billion, and the $6.8 billion was 2013 money of the day prices. So there was no increase. So in 2007's 1.9 billion in money of the day terms is $8.8 billion. So there is no increase.
That was MOD excluding inflation. If we and now is around 3.8 or 3.9 billion dollars. So, Mr. Chairman, that means there's an increase of over 100%. Well, casually, we are talking about overspending to the tune of billions of dollars. But when we come to people's livelihood, just tens of millions of dollars would cause difficulty. But here, they won't even blink their eye on proposing this overspending. And they're telling us that this overspending is unavoidable. It seems that our officials couldn't care less. They still receive their salary. They don't feel that such huge overspending is not a problem at all. Chairman, maybe I've been looking at livelihood issues more. For social welfare, social services, education, healthcare and housing, when we discuss with the government, we are bargaining on a dollar base. And now for this BCP, how much do we overspend? At the beginning is $16.2 billion, and then without approving the funding allocation, they reduced the cost for the infrastructure works. And now these ancillary facilities are also overspending. I don't know whether we're going to overspend on the connecting road as well. So for the whole Liantang BCP, how much are we going to spend on it? Tens of billions of dollars. Is it really useful? As Mr. Gary Fan said, be it vehicular traffic or passenger traffic, you only make up the data which are no longer meaningful. So we're now dumping tens of billions of dollars on this. To what extent is this meaningful? Can you tell us the overall cost of this BCP? Yes, please tell us the overall cost. Due to time constraint, I'd like to clarify a figure first. In 2008, in a paper, in the footnote of an attachment, we mentioned in 2007, the cost of that building is $1.9 billion. If it is September 2014, it should be $3.5 billion. That is jumping from $1.9 billion to $3.5 billion due to inflation. And for MOD prices, it would be exceeding $4 billion perhaps. For the overall Liantang BCP cost, construction cost, including the connecting road, which will cost us over $20 billion. So after calculation for the whole BCP, including construction, realignment of Shenzhen River, it would be $34.5 billion. Now we're asking for $8.8 billion. Previously, we asked for an approved budget. But for the contract, please note that we've already conducted a tendering exercise for this building. So we already know the cost. There won't be any growth or increase. But for the connecting road, for the major ones, we've already conducted a tendering exercise. Sorry, time's up for you. Can you give us supplementary information to compare the original cost and the present cost? Members are very concerned about the cost of the whole Liantang Hengyun BCP, including roads, etc., associated facilities, and so forth. Can you give us a table? Because this project has a long history, so members would like to be informed. It's better for you to explain on the figures as well. So you should let us know that you are not comparing an apple to an orange. So please make your table clear. Next, Mr. Leung Chi-chung. Mr. Chairman, I can see that this project has brought forth a great deal of opportunities for the northern part of Hong Kong, of the new territories, because the northern part of the new territories has been developed quite well. I see a very special figure here. You say that from 2008 to 2050, quantified economic benefits in those 32 years would be around $50 billion. So one of my questions is, how did you arrive at that calculation? And then I agree with some of my colleagues that on the opposite side of the BCP, the economic benefits are much bigger because they have a lot of commercial areas in the vicinity. But for us, the BCP is the BCP. There's no business elements. So what sort of economic benefits are you talking about? Is it that apart from this project, you have other considerations? Number 3, I also agree that cargo transport development can be forecast. It's possible that there will be a growth, but we cannot rule out the possibility of slow growth. So it's just like co-location. This BCP will be quite popular, but you're going to major on cargo transport. You're investing so much into this BCP, but you're expecting only around 30,000 passenger trips and 400 private cars. Would be your forecast passenger growth and vehicular growth. Well, if we have more passenger traffic in future, this BCP won't be able to cope. Take, for example, the Lok Ma Chau BCP. Every day is over 200,000 passenger trips, more than the projected 150,000 passenger trips, which is the planned capacity of that BCP. So, will you facilitate a higher passenger traffic at this BCP? Can you give us some figures? Well, first of all, about economic benefits. We did some calculation. From Tai Po to Long Gang in Shenzhen, there will be a saving of 22 minutes, 5 kilometers on the road. As for the economic benefits, for the $50 billion in the next 32 years, we're only calculating the saving on the cost of vehicles. We only calculate the vehicles. That is, every time there will be a reduction of 5 kilometers in journey time, and then those using the BCP would be willing to pay the price. So it is very difficult to quantify and forecast the economic benefits. For example, how will the BCP benefit the surrounding businesses? It's difficult to quantify that. Just by calculating the cost, it would be $50 billion in 32 years. So if you take into account the overall construction cost, that's still acceptable. As regards passenger traffic, can we have an increase? For a BCP, the most difficult part is inspection or examination of vehicles, because we need a great deal of facilities and manpower for that. Our roads have sufficient residual capacity for that. So if the vehicles are to carry more passengers, that should be possible. Mr. Chan. Well, the Deputy Secretary said that this BCP will lead to more businesses in the vicinity. At the same time, we may have more residential projects and commercial projects in the vicinity. He did not mention that. If you look at the mainland, be it Lok Ma Chau, Huanggang, Shenzhen, or Luowu, on their side, they're all very prosperous areas, but on the Hong Kong side, we only have the BCPs. No residential blocks nearby, no commercial facilities nearby. So when you build such facilities, you should allow more economic benefits in the vicinity. It's just like what the DAB has always emphasized. This is bridgehead economy. Secondly, I'm concerned about the cross-boundary students. Just now we were told that there will be 10 cross-boundary school bus parking spaces. That's too few. Recently, I went to have a look at the Lok Ma Chau spur line. There are a lot of cross-boundary students, and the number of parking spaces have been increased from 4 to 6. And this year there may be a further increase. So for this BCP, if you only have 10 such parking spaces, it won't be able to cope with the growth in the number of cross-boundary students. So you need to study the number of cross-boundary students in future and see how you can cope. As for the parking spaces of such students, we have special facilities, like the students don't need to disembark, so that you don't need more parking spaces. And then I note that this BCP is mainly for lorries, cargo vehicles. I believe that in future these vehicles will go to Tolo Highway. Although Tolo Highway has been widened, still it can just barely cope with the traffic. So in future, with the commissioning of this BCP, will it be able to cope, particularly at Sha Tin? Any special measures to do streaming, mitigation, and so forth? Because these vehicles may not use the Lion Rock Tunnel or the Tate Scan Tunnel. They may use, oh, what's that? That road leading to Tsuen Wan. So this is a question about the pressure on Tolo Highway. Deputy Secretary, very quickly, for the economic data, it is difficult for us to quantify the remaining economic benefits. So we use a traditional and conservative method. That is just to calculate the running vehicular flow. As for future development, that's for the long term. We now have an NT North overall planning project. We'll study how much room for further development we have, such that we can calculate the impact on economic benefits. I'll defer to my colleague for the cross-boundary students. When cargo vehicles use the Tolo Highway and highways in Taipo, we know that the Fanling Kempton Road has already been widened, and there's been a traffic impact assessment study as well. Let me supplement on cross-boundary students. If by that time we discover that there are a lot of such school buses, we can make adjustments. The design is such that they will embark on one side and disembark on the other side. We may make adjustments such that some school buses can use the parking spaces on the other side as a mitigation measure. So we'll look at the overall situation upon commissioning before we do such fine-tuning. Next, Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you, Chairman. We all know that Guangdong is developing very rapidly. Just now, some colleagues said that Shenzhen is developing westward. But in fact, the western side of Shenzhen is already saturated. In future, the development will be on the eastern side. So in the long run, we have to consider the development in Shenzhen East, such that Hong Kong can be interactive in this regard, so as to help with our own development. In 2018, has the administration calculated the vehicular traffic at all BCPs? Most colleagues mention cargo traffic. For tourist coaches, passenger cars, or cross-boundary students, school buses, can we have a table of comparison? That is, after 2018, by what year this BCP will be saturated? That is, for how long can it be sustained? You envisage 30,000 odd passenger trips and 7,000 vehicular trips at the moment. So, at what time will this be saturated?
And our colleagues said that it seems that there is no planning when it comes to commercial activities. And recently, we've heard that there are some, there is chaos when it comes to BCPs because there are so many passengers coming to Hong Kong. Is there any consideration given to separating passengers from cargo transport? Have they given any consideration when it comes to use of land? We can cater for 15,000 cargo vehicles, 200 200 private cars and 850 buses. In 2008, when the estimate was done, we had in mind 2020, that is 70,000 vehicular trips. Now, we see that it will reach 70,000 soon. And currently, well, if we think that if this accounts for about 20% of the overall vehicular traffic, it will be appropriate. And when it comes to future development in the Northern District, we cannot give you the information currently, and we have to take into account studies when it comes to development in NT North. So, given the increase in vehicular traffic, when will the BCP saturate? Well, you have given us the figure at 2020. Well, what if when it's saturated? Does it mean that Hong Kong's development will come to a halt? Well, that depends on the increase. Some members said that in recent years, the increase of cargo vehicles has been lower than our 2008 study. So it will be after 2020 when the capacity reaches saturation, but we haven't done any calculation. Originally, we reckoned that by 2020, the overall traffic volume will be 70,000 when it comes to cross-boundary vehicular traffic. So about 20% of them will use the eastern side, which is, so 17,850 will be sufficient. Well, there are some peak hours, say for example morning peak and afternoon peak, and there will be the off-peak period. So it's the complicated calculation when it comes to saturation. I'm sure you have done some studies on utilization rate. Can you give us the figures? Perhaps I will talk to the planning department, because members have expressed concern about the latest utilization rate. I will go talk to the planning department and revert to you afterwards. What about the different types of vehicles? Can you give us a breakdown? Next, Dr. Kenneth CHAN. Since the reunification, when it comes to infrastructure, the capital works, if you refer to the FC paper, there has been an increase of 175%. It's a huge increase. So when it comes to major projects, if there is no effective control over budget, it's a huge pressure. And current expenditure increases by 106%, and that covers education, healthcare, and other livelihood issues. I have to give this background information when I consider the $8.8 billion. Well, apart from this sum that they are seeking, in the future, the current expenditure of this BCP is $710 million a year. So apart from this project cost, they will come to us to ask for funding approval every year. It puzzles me. The administration said that there is no data showing the overall economic benefit. But we're talking about a huge project, a white elephant. On top of the project cost, we have to fund it every year, $710 million a year. And you now tell us that you've used a period of 32 years, from 2018 to 2050, just $50 billion in terms of economic benefits. So how can you ensure that the BCP will not just squeeze us dry how can you ensure that it will reap economic benefit? We're only talking about cost saved from the shortened traveling time by vehicles and passengers over a period of 32 years is only a savings of $50 billion. Yes, this Liantang-Hengyu-Wai BCP is beneficial to Shenzhen. There will be a lot of construction taking place, a lot of residential properties, prices will increase. It's a huge gift to them. And I think it is a gift done at the expense of Hong Kong taxpayers. How can you give us the confidence that you will be able to recover cost? You shouldn't just come to us to ask us for money. And at the same time, the Financial Secretary told us that everything costs, and he refuses to give us universal retirement protection. When it comes to cross-boundary passenger flow, 75% of it are Hong Kong people. They go to China for to travel or to do business or to visit relatives. So Hong Kong people benefit as well. And whenever there is congestion, even when it's over on the Shenzhen side, and if there is an alternative BCP, say for example Yantian, some business will go elsewhere, say for example to avoid Hong Kong because they don't want to get stuck in traffic. Well, of course, with more roads, traffic will be smoother. But I'm just saying that when it comes to the overall amount, you cannot recover cost. Well, we said that 53 billion is just a rough estimate because we have only used the time saved. For the other benefits, they cannot be quantified, so they are not taken into account. We think that compared to the project cost, this is cost effective. I've heard from members concerned that when it comes to the construction of the BCP, what or how much will Hong Kong benefit? And I'm sure the administration has some information in this regard. This item has been in discussion for a very long time. Some information is fragmented, and of course members can find the information, but they would like the administration to provide the information as a whole so that they can consider before they decide whether to support this project. We're talking about a massive sum. Next, Ms. Alice Mack. In June, the administration said the rough cost is about $1 billion more than the figure they show us now. So what has got more expensive? I know that it's a huge project. Will something else happen to cause a cost overrun? The BCP is important for cross-boundary passengers and also our logistics. Economic benefit is very important because we don't want to just pay, and we don't want the project to affect our logistics industry. Well, let me clarify again. The 6.9 billion in June 2014 paper was 2013 prices. If you change it to money of the day prices, is $8.8 billion. When it comes to the economic benefit, we'll try to find a way to express it. There are some benefits that are difficult to quantify. And we will try to supply the information on paper when it comes to the different benefits. We have done a lot to save cost. We've used a no-frills design, and we hope to construct the project at $8.8 billion. Are there any ways for you to control cost so that cost will not increase in the future? Well, one way is the prices from the tender documents. And we have received the proposal, so we're quite confident that it can be kept under 8.8 billion. What about labor? You will use local labor? For specific technical works, there is a shortage in Hong Kong, and the Labour Department has a supplementary labor scheme. If necessary, we may use this scheme, but it depends on the contractor. The contractor will be responsible for making the application if there is a need. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. There are different parts under this project, and we're here to talk about the BCP and associated works. There is another aspect that is in progress. They are the site formation and connecting roads. And as you know that they have yet to pass the PWSC because there was an adjournment. These parts are all interconnected. But now that the site formation and connecting roads are obstructed, well, I don't know when the BCP and the associated works will get the funding approval. There is another part, the relocation of To Kwa Wan village. Some undertakings have been given to the villagers, so I'd like to ask the Deputy Secretary are you concerned about meeting the timetable when it comes to all these different construction projects and the relocation of To Kwa Wan village? Construction industry and also representatives in the construction industry have come to protest here because they do not want to see any more hindrance and delay in the funding approval. So I want to ask, what is the impact of the delay of the site formation and connecting roads on other projects?
Deputy Secretary, for the contracts granted, progress has been good. To Kwa Wan has already been relocated to a new site, and the formed site will be for the construction of this building, which is due to proceed or start in March. Of course, the postponement or delay in funding will impact on us with difficulties, and the Longshan part or works have not yet been supported. Works have not commenced. So we are very worried about the connecting road. We're even worried that these connecting roads might not be completed even in 2018. Mr. Chairman, concerning the connecting roads and the related works, a major contract has actually expired. That is on the 31st of December. That is, tendering had expired. I asked about the Choi Yun Chun residents because I'm worried that their livelihood may be affected. Deputy Secretary, there is a possibility of slippage. You mentioned tendering and so forth. What measures have been adopted by the government to cope with slippage? How will you handle slippage? Yes, a major contract expired on the 31st of December. After a great deal of hard work, we eventually managed to discuss with the lowest bidder to delay the acceptance of the bid, that is beyond the 31st of December. So for the time being, we still have time to apply for supplementary funding. Delay by how much? That is, to what extent? Well, it's not convenient for me to answer that question for the time being. Ms. Chan Yun-han, I think it's better for you to be frank with us. Yes, all the bids have been received. You've already made a deal. Do you know when this will get passed in LEUNG? This is a political reality facing so many bids queuing up to get passed by our committees. What measures or backup measures the government has? You cannot tell us that for the time being. You can't tell us. You have to tell us something. Because if things don't go smoothly, you may be suppressed in terms of contract price. Now you tell us that we are saving $100 million because you're now asking for $8.8 billion only, so it's all right. But what if things don't go smooth in future? So, Deputy Secretary, you have to answer our questions. Don't wait for fate to come. Don't come and ask us for supplementary funding. You must have a way out. It's not just about development. Even for welfare services, I asked the government for backup measures. The present situation is really difficult. I don't know whether we are going to have all these filibusters up until elections. Well, just now you explained to our colleagues that you are not spending more because in MOD prices, that should be the cost. Well, Mr. Chairman, I've been reading this paper. I think they're playing with figures because you started from 2007-08 and thereafter we got increases and decreases. Deputy Secretary, I think you understand what I'm saying. You're using tactics. During these years, you've been decreasing and increasing costs. And you're treating taxpayers like ATMs. You are continuously asking us for money. So you must give us a table to tell us the reasons. In 2007-08, that was the estimated cost. Now, in MOD prices, this project is still value for money. I don't believe that. My next question is, I hope all the officials here know that after so many years, Hong Kong people's aspirations have changed. This is a huge site. If you just put facilities there, you can't satisfy the more advanced viewpoints. I just read an article which says that some jurisdictions are already putting facilities underground. We've been talking about this for over a decade. That is, at-grade space would be released for other uses. So in the process of planning, you should think about the multi-uses for our land sites. Well, we may need agricultural land. Some land may be very good for agriculture. Maybe it's already too late. This project is 70 to 80% completed. So don't grab land from us. Now, that was the article I read in the Hong Kong Economic Journal 7 to 8 years ago. Why can't you put the facilities underground? Society has developed. Objectively, people's aspirations have grown. If you are just bundling up all these demands, there will be problems. Time's up. We've already listened to your views. If we still have time, in a moment, I'll ask the Deputy Secretary to respond. Mr. Chairman, perhaps you should allow me to say a few words. All right, just a few words. Well, just now I discussed with my colleagues the effective period or the valid period of the bid. You pursue that. In fact, we're in huge difficulty. Apart from the validity period, well, we're striving for extending that to July 2015. But our difficulty is the extension of the validity period doesn't mean that you have solved all problems. Commencement dates will all be postponed. Completion dates will all be postponed. In between, we'll still have inflation. And when calculating the inflation indices, we use the tendering date, the bidding date, not the completion date. We're still doing our calculation. And in between contracts, there are problems that we're not able to solve yet. Well, some issues are more sensitive, I understand. So you should tell us as much as you can, so be as transparent as possible. Mr. Chen. Thank you, Chairman. The government wants us to approve the funding proposal quickly, but they only give us a paper of 10-odd paragraphs. Well, some information might have been given to us in different papers. But in this paper, you should help us to deliberate on whether or not we should support you. We asked about figures. We asked about economic benefits. The Deputy Secretary said that it's difficult to forecast. Of course, but still, you can do some estimation. We asked you for saturation. You said that it's very difficult to define saturation. You now just dropped the idea of calculating the figures. In fact, your basic principle is that you should accept whatever comes. You should review that. For entry facilities, you should not provide them endlessly. Well, you cannot say, oh, I can allow for 20 to 30 people in a queue instead of 10. You should study our capacity to cope as well. We asked you for figures, but you couldn't provide them immediately. For cross-boundary vehicles, for example, you're using a linear calculation. You use a linear growth. 18,000 vehicular trips. When was that arrived at? And on what factors did you do your calculation? And in the short term, will there be major changes? Have you conducted a review? That's for 2030. That's a big figure or overall figure. But will you assess interim growth, for example, once every 5 years? Deputy Secretary, for the original design, yes, that's in 2007 we did the estimation, and then in 2008 we submitted a paper to LEUNG. After that, as some members asked, the growth of cargo vehicles had been lower than estimated. So the reality is a bit different from what we forecast. But our design should be for the long term. We shouldn't just look at the short-term development. We don't have updated figures for the past 2 to 3 years. But as the chairman asked, I can go back and see whether the planning department can give us more updated figures, including estimation on vehicular flow, vehicular traffic, the development of NT North, what benefits will we bring to the residents there. Well, it doesn't matter if they tell us that the estimation was wrong. What they're telling us is that we'll build these facilities first, irrespective of what traffic they're expecting. That wouldn't be all right. They really have to go back and conduct a review. In the PWSC and the FC, we'll ask you similar questions. Well, even if you know that we are going to have a deficit, you still have to let us know. If members, well, some members may accept that risk, some members may want to know more in terms of basic statistics. Deputy Secretary, at the Eastern BCP, it only takes up 10% of the vehicular traffic. So the whole picture is lopsided to the western side. So that's not enough for Hong Kong's long-term development. So we would like to enhance this 10% provision to about 20% on the eastern side. Mr. Michael Tan, Mr. Chairman, I had prepared some remarks to make, but I'll make some additional remarks. Well, when the government came to the PWSC to discuss these projects, as we have a non-cooperation movement at the moment, some bets may expire. If that's to happen, all taxpayers are to bear the consequences. I think councillors will have to take into account that factor. But now you are telling us that the bid could be extended. Well, you told us there's urgency. So we tried to work fast for you. And now you tell us that the bid can be extended. So in future, why should we help you? So you should make members feel the pain. This is a comment. Then let me turn to Lantang. That is the 7th Land BCP. In 2013, for Lok Ma Chau and Shenzhen Bay, the 2 BCPs on the western side, 13 million vehicular trips per year, but at Man Kam toll, only around 2.5 million. Now, we're going to have an additional 550,000 vehicular trips. But that's not even up to the 13 million for Lok Ma Chau plus Shenzhen Bay.
Well, this has been going on from 2008. I'm not very happy with the approach taken by the administration. In 2008, you told us that the whole project was 8.6 billion. And in 2008-9, there were a couple of more projects, and it's over 14 billion. And in 2012 April, you told us that it will now cost 16.2 billion, which was way over the $8 billion you told us originally. And you told us that the 16 billion included site formation, construction, everything. And we believed you and gave you the 16.2 billion. And now is increased to 25 billion. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us that after the 16.2 billion there would be something else added to it? Where does it come from? That's why I am so unhappy with the administration's approach. In 2012 April, you came to us. You turned something that is 8 billion into 16 billion, and you did not tell us that there are additions. You have not told us everything that should be included, and later is increased to 25 billion. We have given you more for one part, but there is still another part that has to get funding from us. So we're not talking about 16 billion increased to 25 billion, and you've been asking us for the same scope. I did not have that information paper with me. I can tell you that we came to the LEUNG for site formation and connecting roads. That excluded the BCP. No, it said at that time it was site formation, infrastructure, construction BCP, and connecting roads. That was the $16.2 billion, the entire project. Now, 2 more items are added to it. Yes, that included the cost of design, but not the construction of the complex. Why didn't you tell us that there will be another $9 billion project on top of the $16.2 billion? You only told us in June last year that something else that is $16 billion will be added to it. Well, you also mentioned about extension of the validity of tender documents. If that is to be done, consent have to be given by both sides. If contractors refuse, it cannot be extended. Well, I was referring to one of the outstanding contracts, the only outstanding contract, in fact, of the connecting roads. There are a number of issues that remain outstanding when the contract is not awarded. Say, for example, there is no determination about the project cost, handover. Some contractors have submitted a tender, but we have put them on hold, and there is pressure on them as well. Of course, when it comes to extension, you will need to negotiate, and that is no easy task. Next, Ms. Emily Lau. Chairman, I think that the administration has handled it poorly. Your good self reminded them that this is a massive project with a substantial amount, and they have to give us sufficient information to show us that there is indeed a need. You've heard all the questions. Different political parties ask about the same thing. Ms. Michael Tian mentioned about the non-cooperation movement. We did not do it for the sake of it. It's because there are many unanswered questions. There are many disputes in society that remain unresolved. The officials have heard from legislators. There are many different questions, but they are more or less about the same thing. It's not just about economic benefit. Say, Mr. Wu Chi-wai and Chen Yuen-han talked about the sites. Why didn't they use the site to meet our housing need? Michael Tian criticized about the filibustering, but in the same breath he said that I found this unacceptable. Is it the case that Michael Tian is joining us in a non-cooperation movement? He's also joining us in the filibustering? Please be reasonable with what you said. The answers from the administration are unacceptable to people from different political parties. Mr. Wu Chiwei said that there seems to be a reduction in the traffic volume. And the administration said that the figure was 3 years ago, and they could not give us the most updated figure. They haven't told us whether there has been any changes. They simply come to ask us for $10–20 billion. Money just don't fall onto your laps. It's not just the Democratic Party. There are different political parties asking for different things related to livelihood, education, and the administration refuses us. Listen to the chairman. Give us a better information paper, and then let us decide whether to accept your proposal. Mr. Michael Tian criticized us, and in the same breath he said he found this unacceptable. So I'd like to ask the officials, when will they give us a proper information paper? Yes. Let me clarify a number of points. When it comes to project cost, we will give you information in tabular form, explaining why we arrive at the $35.4 billion. When it comes to traffic volume, well, I must say that there has not been any drop in the overall traffic volume. It's just the rate of increase that has reduced. On average, there is about 40,000 vehicular trips a day. But for individual BCPs, the rate of increase is not as big as we have estimated. And as I've said in the past, it will be difficult to make a prediction of a short cycle. We will go back to look into it to find out whether we can update our information, our prediction. And when it comes to the economic benefit, well, we're talking about a boundary control point. The land over there mostly belong to private owners, so we can't do what we want. And I've said that there is a macro planning for the development for NT-North. We have to take that into consideration. We can't just look at the BCP and nearby development. So when will you be able to give us the supplementary information? Give us some time, we'll do it as soon as possible. Next, Mr. James Tan. Well, I've been involved for a number of years when it comes to major projects. And in the past few years, the administration has given us the impression that they have come to us piece by piece. They have chopped up the project into smaller pieces and come to us one piece at a time. I won't use heavy words such as cheating. And they originally came to us to ask for 16 billion, and then there is a overrun. And they told us that there is another item. Of course, Pan-Democrats have their reasons to not cooperate. And I agree that the Pan-Democrats should be uncooperative and object to you. But for some other areas, Pan-Democrats did not cooperate with you and yet vote for you. And if you don't want to, if you don't want to cooperate, then object to it. And I think in some ways the administration is helping with the filibustering. First of all is the fragmented information supplied. If you can't pass the panel, then you will have difficulties in passing the PWSC and the FC. We only have just a few more years. Given the current rate of progress, I'm afraid you will not be able to complete the project. Why didn't you give us the entire scope? That is now the $25 billion. I am concerned. I would like to say that the Liberal Party attaches a lot of importance on Hong Kong's economic development. I agree that the figures fail to show what you've predicted. Of course, there are many factors in play when it comes to growth in vehicular traffic, passenger traffic. Mainland's been doing quite well, and we lag behind. Has the administration spoken to the mainland authorities? We have the Hong Kong BCP. What about the mainland side? It will take another 2 or 3 years before you get the funding approval, and it will take another 8 years before the BCP is completed. Perhaps by then, Shenzhen will not need us anymore, and this will be built for nothing, and that will become indeed a white elephant project. We have communicated and kept in contact with mainland authorities when it comes to this project. After the Liantown BCP, there is the Shenzhen Middle Expressway. The expressway will be connected to Liantown. Shenzhen has put in a lot into the project over their side. And they agree with us that traffic over the eastern side should go directly through the east and not having to divert to the west. Mr. Albert Chan. Lying is also pathological. CY LEUNG has a pathological disorder when it comes to lying. I didn't expect that his disease is so contagious that it has also affected officials in infrastructures. In the past 2 years, there has been serious underestimate of project cost, and it gives the public the impression that the administration has been falsely reporting information to us, resulting in a huge increase in project cost. Of course, we understand that in some cases it's the market that has affected it. What we see recently, in my opinion, is something more than market mechanism. Did they deliberately avoid certain issues or factors? Did they deliberately miscalculate in their estimate? Well, that is for you to think about. Can you give us a table after the meeting about NT-North developments, say Kutong, other infrastructural projects? So all capital works in NT-North, give us a table. What items, what projects have been given funding approval? Which projects are being studied? Give us a table so that we understand the relationship among these different projects.
Sometimes projects are interrelated. If we approve funding for one but not for the others, there may be problems. Of course, here we focus on the BCP. Concerning this BCP, the administration should consider the growth in price because the government shouldn't treat it as sitting on a huge fortune. The FS is holding all the money. And we're talking about a universal retirement protection scheme, but was rejected. And what about dental services for the elderly? The elderly people got bad teeth, but no treatment. And still the government refuses to grant money to provide dental services for the elderly. Well, $20 billion odd. If you can grant $20 odd billion for dental services for the elderly, all elderly would get their bad teeth treated. If you ask members of the public, the majority of them will support using this $20 odd billion for dental services for the elderly rather than for this BCP. Well, we've got so few or a small population there at the Shenzhen Bay corridor. That is a super white elephant project. In future, the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge will be another white elephant project. So vehicular traffic is very important. As for government estimation, in the 1990s, we're all very ambitious. We would like to develop a lot of BCPs. But recently, the situation has totally changed. So I think the government should review the need for such works. Particularly, it should review on cost effectiveness. And for the Shenzhen Bay corridor, the government should tell us the original estimated traffic flow and give us the present situation so that we can study whether we need this land town project. Well, we should also have a list of public works project checklists so that we know the interrelated issues. Yes, including Kutong, NT Northeast, ancillary roads, etc. Well, some are only under planning. I know, but all these projects should be set out in the list. So you would like to cover the whole Northeast NT, right? Yes. Well, Mr. Chairman, Kutong is very far away from this BCP. Let us come back to Ka-lok or Fanling. We can try our very best to provide information on those areas. Well, for the first round, I've no more members. Any more? I'd like to complete the first round first. Then we can proceed to the second round. For the second round, a number of members would like to ask questions. Mr. Gary Fan, Mr. Wu Chi Wai, Ms. Chen Yun Han, Mr. Michael Chan, Mr. Kenneth Chan, and Mr. Albert Chan. 3 minutes for questions and answers per member. Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to repeat my second question in the first round. That is for government works, for building works, infrastructure works. There are two different sets of standards. Will the government change that system? Is it that we don't have independent quantity surveyors for civil engineering works and construction works to control costs, such that this had happened? Because ever since I was electrical member, overspending has become something normal for infrastructure projects. For the construction of buildings, the government has its own quantity surveyors to monitor the situation. Deputy Secretary, let me tell you the background to these two sets of standards. For construction works and civil engineering works, they're different in nature. For quantity surveying, for building works, we need more such surveying. For a building, doors, windows, locks, etc., need to have quantity surveying. But for civil engineering works, relatively speaking, they need less quantity surveying. This is not just for Hong Kong. This is the case throughout the whole world. For civil engineering works, they're done by the designer or civil engineering consultants because works are fewer. But for building For buildings, we need quantity surveying. We have professional quantity surveyors. In civil engineering works, in construction works, contracts, indeed, for construction works under the contract, there is this post of quantity surveyor who is responsible for quantity surveying so as to assess the cost for completion of works in the course of payment to the contractor. For civil engineering works, the civil engineer will be responsible. Recently, we got this suggestion that civil engineering work should be included in the building works, the construction works. But up to this moment, we haven't got data to support that suggestion. By doing so, can we reduce costs? We don't know. But we have two sets of standards, right? Oh, that's another thing. Under the new building contracts, we have a project manager, and he is different from the supervisor. This is not quantity surveying. One is responsible for works management. Instructions will be issued by him. The other supervisor is to supervise the quality of the works. That is, whether or not the completed works are up to our requirements. Is completely different from quantity surveying. As far as I understand, concerning Mr. Gary Fan's question, the Institute of Quantity Surveyors did comment on this. For cost calculation and cost assessment, we need an independent profession to do the evaluation. It may be the quantity surveyors or the engineers. But for construction costs, at the moment we don't have an independent consultancy system. That's why we arrived at this so-called two sets of standards as mentioned by you for one single project. Do we need to review this established system? Maybe this is not an issue for this present discussion, but I believe some institutes are concerned about this at the moment. If you want to understand more, I may be able to give you some information. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. The Deputy Secretary's reply clearly indicates that no updated assessment had been done on vehicular traffic. In a moment, he can answer this. East in, east out. This is your concept. How many economic activities need to adopt this mode of operation? Or will all economic activities go westwards, irrespective of whether there's an eastern BCP? Because now they're in the ratio of 9:1. Originally, for the Shenzhen Bay Corridor, you envisaged 40,000 vehicular trips, but now it's only 10,000. So, will it still be east in, west out in future? So it may not be necessary to have this concept of east in, east out, but you've already started. Now, given that this is such a big site, should we not make sure that this site will be put to the highest use so as to enhance cost effectiveness? Apart from Ms. Chen Yunhan's point, can we put in other land uses? Even for the passenger terminal building, can it form part of the shopping mall at this BCP, such that we'll have sufficient economic proceeds? Maybe back then you did not study the latest economic situation, but we don't want this BCP to become another white elephant. So please tell us, where will the economic activities for this east in, east out concept? And for this site on the eastern part, apart from BCP, can it put to housing or shopping uses? Deputy Secretary, we answered a lot about vehicular traffic. As for this concept of east in, east out, we're saying that vehicles from Huizhou and Shantou, given the present vehicular traffic, when they come to Shenzhen, they only get shut out. Well, after coming, what economic activities will there be? Well, these vehicles may go to the container ports or go to other industrial and commercial areas. All sorts of activities. Look at our road network of Hong Kong at the moment. If these vehicles cannot enter at an eastern BCP, they have to go to Lok Ma Chau or Shenzhen Bay. Then after coming into Hong Kong, they'll have to make a detour before they can go to the Kwai Chung container port and other areas. So that's where we have been losing out. If they can come into Hong Kong at an eastern BCP, they can be connected to the eastern road network and then go to Sha Tin and other districts. As for land uses, well, let me use my time for this question on land use, if there's no objection on the part of members. I'd like the Deputy Secretary to tell us how land sites will be put to good use. Many members would like to ask that question. Well, this Lantang site is only 18 hectares in area. It's not too big. Why is it not too big? Because we will try to avoid land resumption as far as possible. And we try to make full use of our roads. So this BCP facility will have several levels. Well, there can be direct access to the car park or even up to level 2. And then when tourists want to use this BCP, they can go to level 2. So there's not much room for superstructure development, because we're talking about a BCP to cope with 30,000 passengers, 130 hectares for Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. But here is a much smaller site, so you cannot compare the two. Next, Mr. Kenneth CHAN. Thank you, Chairman. A few colleagues have left the room, so it's now my turn. Mr. Chairman, just now you tried to sum up my questions. I think you got to my main point. That is, we're going to pay a huge sum of money. Well, more than $8.8 billion for the building. And then for recurrent expenditure, it now stands at $710 million. So I'd also like to pursue the question of cost effectiveness or value for money. In recent times, the audit report criticized the Civil Aviation Department. Back then, the government asked us to trust it. Well, the government told us that such facilities would definitely be useful and effective. So we should look at the long term. There wouldn't be any problem. However, the value for money assessment at that time was done very roughly. The government told us that we shouldn't be worried. So we trusted the government, and then we gave the government a sum of money to procure a sophisticated radar system. Why am I repeating this lesson for the officials and us to learn again? Because for this site, it's very difficult to have development in the vicinity. In 2008, Mrs. Carrie Lam already mentioned that that's the restricted zone. You need a special permit to enter it. Well, unless you develop high-class houses there.
If you want to use every inch of the site, you may have, does it mean that adding retail facilities there will be sufficient to cover cost, at least for the $710 million? But what about the project cost? How do they find ways to recover the project cost, the construction cost? I see that it's difficult to have residential areas there because it is, after all, a restricted area. So other than putting in commercial activities there, how can they ensure cost effectiveness? Is it the case that they want to just do them a favor over the border because they want vehicles to be able to go in east and go west in, west out, east in, east out? Well, I think colleagues are asking you to give us some information. If you can explain away how you can cover the cover cost, and then you can give us the information. If you don't have the information, just tell us you don't have it, and then leave us to decide whether we believe you. For some, it's difficult to quantify. Well, for those that we can quantify, we are talking about economic benefits of $50 billion, but we're talking about $20 billion of project cost. I don't think it will be a success. Mr. Michael Tian. Well, when I speak, I don't normally target a particular member, but just now Ms. Emily Lau mentioned my name 3 times. Perhaps she didn't really understand me. My stance is very clear. First, I was talking about the non-cooperation movement. The purpose is that they will drag the administration's feet. And they think that well, actually you have some leeway. And they've guessed right. You do have leeway. And next time when you tell us there is an urgency, and no one will believe you. So please think twice when you tell us that there is an urgency. Well, that's all I was saying. Don't use this reason so lightly. I wasn't criticizing anyone. 2. And I think we're talking about 30 million vehicular trips a year for the west, and the middle and the eastern side is just several million. That is not good for Hong Kong's future economic development. So we're only talking about an increase of $5 million to bring it up to about 13 million. And I do see development opportunities over the eastern side. What I am not happy about is the approach of the administration. They told us originally that it was 8 billion, and then it was increased to 16 billion. And if you told us back then that on top of the 16 billion, there is another part that will bring the entire amount to 25 billion, and I would know, well, when I gave you the answer, I would know was included. Well, at that time I wasn't a legislator. I believe that if they knew that 8 is going to become 24, they would ask you to find a cheaper alternative and write off the maybe 16 billion. And now we know that 16 is increased to 25. And last year you told us that the project cost will increase and there will be more parts under the project. Every time you come to us for funding approval, you have to tell us everything, all the things that are included in the project, including those that are not under the current funding approval. You have to do this, otherwise next time no one will believe you. Why did you not tell us what the entire sum will be? I was talking about the time in April 2014. Well, in 2012, we said 16.2 billion. That was the connecting road and site formation. I don't have the information paper of 2012. Mr. Tian read out a certain part. I think that's only related to construction. Well, that doesn't matter. I believe, okay, let's say that there will be a part that is not mentioned. Why did you not tell us? Because now you ask for $8 billion on top of the 16 billion. Shouldn't you give us the heads up back in 2014? Please supply us with an information paper. Mr. Albert Chan. Mr. Michael Chan's words are not difficult to understand, and I think his understanding of the non-cooperation movement is only skin deep. I hope that he will maybe read more and listen more intently to what other members said. What he said is a distorted version of the movement and is out of focus. I'm not going to get into a debate with Mr. Michael Tian. Now, back to the expenditure related to the BCP. I ask for a set of figures. Well, there is some so-called academic who said that every Hong Kong person who goes to the country park will actually cost us $20,000. For the deep bay corridor is another white elephant project, and this will be another one. So give us the figures. I hope the loyalists should at least look at the figures before they vote yes. I will object to it. But in the days of LEUNG, I told people that they have sold this for pittance, because the estimate of a car park is just $50,000, and next door in Kingswood Villa is asked for $200,000, and this time we're ignored again. Let's say it's 30 years. After completion, how many people will be using it, how many vehicles will be using it, and then calculate the average project cost, administration cost. Give us the figures so that how much you're taking from our pockets to subsidize the rich and powerful, because we've already said that anti-northeast belongs to the rich and powerful. It's their back garden. Give us the information after the meeting. Yes. As I said, we will give you information in a tabular form for the $35.4 million. We will also give you information about how we calculate the the traffic volume. What about administration cost? Say, for example, personnel, maintenance, and repair. I'm sure you have the figure. Give us the estimate so that we'll know how much we will have to pay to subsidize those who use the BCP. But you don't charge using the PCP. No. So it's not the rich who's using it. Well, but just some academics said that everyone who uses the country park is actually using us $20,000. I think that person just pack up and go. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. The DS said east in, east out, and he admitted economic activities over the eastern side is limited. A lot of them will have to go via the western side to use the container terminal. So does the administration have the figure, the traffic volume for east in, east out, and west in, west out? And you ask for 18 hectares of land for the passenger terminal building or vehicle examination complex, but we're talking about entirety of 33 hectares. That is the area encircled in red. And you told us that over 30 hectares of land has been formed. I'm asking whether there can be other activities in the area encircled red. I don't want this project to be another white elephant. Can you also tell us that within this area, can you construct a BCP commercial complex or shopping complex? Because in the anti-north-east, there has been problems of people engaging in parallel trade. this is right next to the border. And you told us that you will not consider segregating those who engage in parallel goods trading. Can you give us more information? Perhaps I will defer to the CEDD about the area of the red circle. I don't think it's 30 hectares. What about the area of farmland? Now, when it comes to farmland, it may include other sites. Say for example, the relocation of Chuk Yuen Chun. The land has been formed, but it's not within this area. And about facilitation facilities for visitors. Well, we have set aside about 1,000 square meters for visitors to shop, maybe in the form of a convenience store. It may not be a shopping mall. But we have heard criticisms that there is no retail facilities there. There is an area of 1,000 square meters for that purpose. It's 23 hectares. But there is still 5 hectares of land, which is huge. Can we make better use of the 5 hectares of farmland? But we have used up all the area within that red circle. There is a shortage of land, that's why we have to stack facilities up. So there is no surplus land for shopping mall. Well, you see that for the artificial island of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and now they come to us for funding approval to do a study to turn this into 130 hectares of shopping city. Why can't they adopt the same logic? We are also concerned that given the figure of the administration, the rate of increase is very small. So it's very likely that this project is going to be another white elephant. Why don't they make better use of the site? Even when there is not enough passenger or vehicle using the BCP, they can be put to other uses. We have spent close to 120 minutes on this item. Now, I think the discussion should come to an end. Members, do you support the administration's application for funding approval with the PWSC? But we don't have the information. A lot of the information is still missing. Well, when I ask the question, it's based on the information available. The administration would like to get a decision from the panel. I have to ask this question.
That is, we have to consult members on their decision on this project. So members, would you please signify whether or not you support the administration's proposal in the paper such that it can go to the PWSC. Mr. Chen Kamlan, I claim a division. All right, a division. Well, just now the clerk told me that the division bell is out of order. So, in order that members have enough time to come back to vote, as there's no division bell, the Secretariat staff will call members back. Mr. Chen Kamlan, Mr. Chairman, we have a few more items on the agenda, so I suggest that we can allow 10 minutes for members to come back, but we can proceed to the next item concurrently. Any objection? Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether this is in order, because in the past, the rule was that when the division bell was ringing, the meeting would be suspended. Well, in fact, we have quite a lenient timetable for today, so perhaps we'll just make use of the coming 10 minutes to inform members to come back to vote. All right, so we'll resume at 11:13. Thank you.